Hi everyone, so what I need to do now is we've obviously done part A, so I need to talk you through how to do part B. So this is where it starts to get a little bit complicated, and I feel that this form will probably go through most of the skills that you are required for part B. So you do need to perhaps watch it a few times, perhaps practice it in the computer room, and then hopefully this will become quite obvious as to how you do it. So the first two bullet points, so we need to, if you have a look at the instructions for B, an import form to add test results. And the first two bullet points, which are here, so the form should not include any validation for fields, and the form should not include an automated routine to save data. So essentially, don't change any validation rules on your tables, and then we can't use an automated routine to save data because it's actually not necessary. This is just a form to look at and add test results. So if you, again, if you look at that, so the form opens the date of the latest test week, which must display automatically in a field, okay? So to do that, you need to use a formula called a Dmax. So we have done one of these before. Let me just get rid of that. Okay. So what I would advise you to do is basically go to create, and I would start a blank form. Okay, so we'll go into design view, and then we need to add a label, and on that label we need to get the latest test result to come up. So I'm going to show you how to do it and explain why I've done what I have done. Okay, so let's get one of these. Sorry, I don't mean a text box, I mean a label. So let's get one of these. Okay, just for good practice as you're doing this, let's have a look at here, and we want to put in something like test week. Okay, so the user knows exactly what that data is for. So again, let's just quickly check back. It says the form opens the date of the latest test week. Okay, so I'm going to write in a formula, and then I'll just explain to you what that formula means. So if you put in equals d max, not that, and then if you put around brackets, and I'm going to put the text test week, okay, and then I'm going to put in close speech marks, and then I'm going to put in speech marks again, and then I'm going to put table test result. Okay, now the reason why I put that, just to explain, is that will find the highest in that column, and then we're looking at the field test week, and it's out of the table test results. So if you look on the left hand side, I've made sure that the text matches exactly, and I know that the field with test week in looks exactly the same as that. Okay, so hopefully you understand what I've done there. Okay, so if you ask to automatically bring up the highest amount, you start off with an equals Dmax, and then you select the field in the table that applies to. Okay, so let's double check back to our results. So we've done that one, so we tick that off. Okay, so there must be a combo box for the subject. This must contain only the subjects that have a test in that test week displayed on the form. Okay, so if I go back to my form, okay, and then I will add in a combo box, which is here because it asks you to add in a combo box. Okay, we will leave the content for that for the minute. Okay, and then you need to make sure that you make sure that this text is applicable. So if we just put select a subject, because we want the user obviously to select a subject, just try and put capitals in, all like I've just done. And then what we need to do, so we have done these before, but again, it's a little bit complicated to try and remember how to do it. So we want in this form, we want them to be able to select the subject and then we want them to be able to select from that subject the max mark of that subject. So if you go to the row source, which this is where we can add the contents of our drop down menu, so the 3 dots there, okay, and I'm just going to add the tables, because I can't remember where the data is, but I will when I put those in. So I want to bring up the subject title so the user can select the subject title, and then I want to bring up the maximum mark for each subject. Okay, so in this query I've selected the 3 dots, and I want them to be grouped so we can just see the names of the subjects, so we just put in the total. So hopefully when we look at this drop down menu, it will drop down a list of the subject title and the maximum mark. So I'm just going to close it, it'll ask me to save it, and I'll press yes. Okay, so what is also important when we do these drop down menus is, at the moment we've obviously got one column showing up. So if you go to format and we need both the columns to show up, we just add 2 as a column count. Okay, it is also really good practice, and I'll explain why, to change the name of the combo box. So let's call that select subject, just to remind us. Oh, spell it correctly. Okay, and that'll remind us what that combo box is for. So just to recap, I have made sure that the 2 columns are visible, and then I have changed the name of that combo box. So let's have a look at this in form view. So if we drop that down, as you can see, we have the information taken across from the query, and the user then can see which subjects they want to select. Okay, because different subjects have different tests, that's why they've got a different maximum mark. Right, okay, so we want to display to the user, let's have a look at the question again. So we want to display to the user, they must have a combo box for the subject. This must contain all the subjects in the test week displayed on the form. Once the user has selected a subject from the form, it must display the maximum mark in that field. So we want to display the maximum mark separately. So let's go and add another label, and then make it clear that we want the maximum mark. Okay. Now again, we have done this before, so if you have a look at the formula that I'm going to type in, hopefully I can explain it to you. So this just needs to be in square brackets, so we need to put the name of the combo box, which I named above, which I called select subject, and then close that, then we put a dot, then we need to tell the computer which column of data that we want to bring up. So if I just close those brackets, because we need to look at column, and then we need to look at column 1, don't we? Now the reason why we look at column 1 is because we want to, because when we have a computer, the first field is always 0 and the second field is always 1. So if you want to bring up the second column, we need to put the number 1, which I know sounds slightly confusing, but that's what you need to do. So then if we select A-level chemistry, as you can see, the max mark is selected there. Okay, so let's go back to design view, and what we need to do next is, it says, let's have a look, so the user must then be able to input fields. So we need to be able to input the number of students who took the test, the highest mark and the lowest mark achieved. So we need to put 3 labels in, so it can be a field that users can enter data in. So let's put 1, 2, obviously you can make this look prettier than mine, 3, okay, let's have a quick check again. So number of students, highest and the lowest mark. So let's have a change this data, don't want to do it. I'm going to put number of student, let's not put it in capitals as well, student. and then we want the highest mark, don't we? Highest mark, and then we want the lowest mark. Okay, so let's just change these a little bit so make sure the columns aren't. If it does that, just try and separate one of them, and they shouldn't move together like that. I know it's a bit tricky to arrange the layout of these. So let's try and put them in some sort of row, but I'm sure that you can do a better job than I'm doing now. Okay. So it's just a question of playing around with the boxes. I know it's a little bit fiddly, it's not the greatest software to use. Okay, so let's just quickly check that. Go into form view. Okay, can we write data in there? Yeah, that's fine. Right, okay, so go back to design view, and then this is the important bit where I'm going to just remind you how to do calculations. So we need to find the highest mark as a percentage, and then we need to find the lowest mark as a percentage. So hopefully you have the mathematical ability to work this out. So if we have a look at calculating this, so we need to go back into our form on design view. If you remember, when I click on that, we put in, well, you put the user puts in the number of students, the highest mark. Okay, I will need to firstly name this box. Highest mark, just something you remember, and then I will need to, obviously, because I'm going to use this in a calculation, lowest mark, I need to name those boxes. So I have given them a label of highest mark, and then I have given them a label of the lowest mark. So in order to do calculations, remember we don't actually add the data in the field, we add together the information that has been inputted by the user. So you must make sure that if you're doing a calculation that you correctly name these labels. Okay, so in order to work out the highest and the lowest mark as a percentage, again, this will be done automatically using formulas. So if I again just label this, I'm going to do the highest percentage, because remember I said we have to work it out in percentage, and then this will be my lowest percentage. Okay, so hopefully you've worked out that in order to do this calculation, which is the highest and the lowest mark as a percentage, you need to basically divide the highest mark by the max mark. Okay, so to do a calculation you've got to do it in curly brackets first. We need to select and write in the name where the highest mark will be inputted, then we divide it by the max mark. I just need to check that I have called that field max mark. Okay, for that to work, let me just double check. No, I haven't, so I need to call that max mark. Okay, so if you have a look at that, then that should then work it out. The highest mark divided by the maximum mark should give you the answer. Let's have a look at the form view. Okay, so if I put in a number of 23 students, I know that the maximum mark is 90, so I'm going to put in that. And then I know that perhaps 23 I'm going to put as the lowest mark. So what you might notice is that's not been expressed as a percentage, which is quite easy to fix. If you go on to design view, and then remember you can actually format the data. So if I change that to a percentage, that then should be displayed as a percentage, which it has done perfectly. So let's go and do a similar thing to this one. So the first thing I want to do is change it to a percentage, and then I'm going to go to equals, open brackets, and then we put lowest mark, and then close the square brackets because that's a field we're using, and another square bracket, so I'll put max mark. Okay, close that square bracket, close the curly bracket, and then that should work out correctly. So let me check. I can enter the subject level. We know the max mark. I know the number of students who have taken the test. I know the highest marks, the lowest marks in the class, and that's a percentage that is expressed as the highest mark and the lowest mark. Okay, so what you need to do is you need to make sure that you have, for example, print screen that in design view, print screen that in form view, and then really importantly, if you've done any extra calculations that are attached to, for example, the combo box or extra queries, you need to make sure that you make those evident in your print screens, because that just demonstrates that you have used an extra skill. Okay, so that concludes the video. You need to make sure design view, datasheet view, and any other extra functions or formats you've used needs to be evidence, and perhaps a little sentence to explain why you've done it. So although it sounds quite difficult, that hopefully should explain to you how to do the more difficult forms, and you should be able to apply that hopefully in your exam on Friday. Okay, thanks.